The OCR English A-Level Women in Literature exam paper is fast approaching. This video is going to give you some crucial tips about how you should write your essays, how you should structure them, and some general pointers which will help you increase your mark. Before giving the tips though, I'm about to show you a full essay that I wrote over the weekend. Each slide will progress after 5 seconds, so press pause on each one to read it now. Time for tips. And the first one is to interrogate the question within the introduction. Don't just blandly agree with the statement. Probe it, pick it apart, and mention some key characters and details from the novels. Now, perhaps this introduction is too risky. Perhaps the tone is too jocular, as seen in phrases such as end this essay after a single piece of A4 with a triumphant full stop. But is it interesting to read? Does it include some crucial points about the different contexts? And within the yellowed section, do I begin to suggest that my argument will be engaging and different, with a genuinely interrogative, nuanced approach to the question? Here is the introduction from an OCR exemplar response, which received full marks. Read it now. This is clearly a safer introduction, which nonetheless picks apart the question and shows that some development will occur, i.e. the idea that some women are victimized due to their apparent madness. Next tip, make specific regular comparisons. Don't just talk about one text and then talk about another one with a hopeful in comparison or in contrast in between. The whereas structure can work well. Within the extract on screen, I summarise the argument from the previous paragraph about an aspect of Sense and Sensibility before shifting on to explore a point about the limited options for the female protagonist within Oranges. Here, I seize upon Winterson's extraordinary description of her own mother as a monster at the end of one paragraph, and use the same word within the opening sentences of the next paragraph in order to reassure readers that Mrs. Dashwood is most certainly not a mothering monster. And here I make a specific comparison about the fact that in both texts women disregard social convention. However, ultimately, Jeanette's lesbianism is far more problematic, whereas at least Marianne only knows how to be of a heterosexual bent. Tip 3. The importance of context. Remember that you are comparing texts from different time periods. In the case of my essay, there are more than 170 years between the publication of Sense and Sensibility and Oranges. This must affect how we interpret society's treatment of women. So ensure that you contextualize each text appropriately. So here you can see within my introduction that I point out about the extraordinarily limited options for women in the 19th century. And I also give an insight into contextual attitudes towards homosexuality in the 1980s. And here I point out that both same-sex partnerships and same-sex marriages only came into force 20 or more years after the publication of Oranges Are Not the Only Fruits. As ever with A-level essays. Critical references need to be integrated within the main argument and not hopefully tagged on as an afterthought. Notice how I do this deftly here between the two dashes. Mrs. Dashwood most certainly behaves more like a friend than a mother to Marianne. And here, following my rhetorical question, I use Rebecca Richardson's quotation about the theatricality and artificiality of Lucy to further my argument that women can subvert social convention by their own means. Of course, AO2 is not assessed in this essay, and so you don't need to analyse language, form and structure. But it is helpful to embed short quotations from your text to show a detailed, precise understanding. They don't need to be long or necessarily complicated. Here I embed missionary and breeding grounds. Here I embed unnatural passions and demons. The key point is that without embedding quotations, the danger is that your essay can become too generic and general. It is surely through the reference to small details that we end up developing our ideas and insight further. But as well as some short embedded quotations, include plenty of references to details and moments from the text for the same reason. So here, I don't just say that Marianne disregards the rules of propriety in her courtship with Willoughby. I give 3 examples. And here, I don't just say that Jeanette is treated shamefully following the exposure of her relationship with Melanie. I refer to her public denunciation in church and the 36 hours she has to endure without food within the darkness of her own room. Tip 7 is important. Avoid oversimplification. Do not overstate the suffering repression of female characters within the text. It is all too easy just to say that women in the 19th century are victims and that they had no power in relation to their male counterparts. The truth is more nuanced. So here I point out that Eleanor doesn't suffer just due to patriarchal structures, but also the way she is as a person. And here I suggest that women do suffer, but due to a very specific cause, the loss of Norland due to the selfish apathy of their brother and primogeniture. Remember to develop your arguments. Don't just make one single point which you back up before making another. Here, I develop the idea that primogeniture unfairly causes women's lives to be turned upside down by pointing out that this is particularly unfair because the eldest son already has plenty of dosh and so doesn't need the inheritance. Here, I develop the initial idea that Mrs. Dashwood may prioritise passion over prudence by pointing out that this can have negative consequences, humiliation and illness. Finally, make the essay interesting to read. Make it lively. Why not show affection for a few of the characters? If there are eye-catching quotations, and let's face it, Jeanette Winterson never provides a dull interview, then use them.
This has been a Schofield on Shakespeare production, giving you those crucial tips to succeed within your English A-Level Women in Literature comparative question. Many thanks for watching.